Bread Podcast, episode number 251, book update, how the Me Too movement affected my new book. Also talking about book Forewords. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. Here's your host, David Hooper.
Hey, David Hooper here, in the middle of a series guiding you through the process of launching a book. I'm following my current book launch. I'm not going to go in after the fact. I'm going to give you the highs, the lows, the middles as they happen. That's why you haven't heard from me. Been working on this book. It's been a couple of months since I've updated you. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about two main topics, test readers and forwards. Let me give you a quick recap since the last episode, since I'm releasing these things so sporadically. I finished the manuscript, sort of, the latest edition of the manuscript, about 60 days ago. I immediately sent it to three people. I have my previous editor, the original editor, not the current team that I'm working with, and two test readers. And my instructions when I sent this manuscript, by the way, I think it's, 90,000 words. I've had various word counts. I've probably written 130, 150,000 words. The original draft was 120,000 words. And I wanted to cut this down to where it's going to be quick, to the point. It's not too quick. It's going to end up being close to 400 pages because there's a lot in it. But I wanted it tight. I got the last draft done. I felt it was as tight as it could be. Sent it to these three people with these instructions. I said, read it. Let me know what's wrong with it. Are there any holes? The main thing I wanted them to look for, though, was what I call flow issues. Like a podcast, you want your book to feel complete, a beginning, a middle, and an end. It needs to work you up, get you where you want to go, and bring you back down so you feel that you've gotten a complete experience. And they did. These test readers did do that. They gave me three different opinions, lots of little fixes. I'm talking things like grammar, typos, a few ordering issues. Maybe you should put this ahead of that other section. I took that into consideration. The draft didn't have any subsections labeled. Had to go in and add a lot of subsections to guide people through the process. I mean, the content was there, but it was done in my head. Again, I was looking for flow. I know this content arguably better than somebody reading this book. I certainly know what I mean to say better than somebody who's reading this book. So I went back in, kind of gave them a guide. Imagine being on a path at an amusement park. Yeah, you can stay on the path. You know how to get where you're going, but it's nice to have those signs along the way that say, yeah, you're going the right way. And before we get to the end of the path, here are these things in the middle that you should consider. The feedback was more or less what I expected. I don't even know what draft I'm on this thing. I want to say, fourth draft. There have been a lot of rewrites, a lot of tightening up of this. Part of it is that this project has gone on for so long. And this is a book about podcasting, how to market yourself via a podcast. And it's a world that's changing. Technology changes faster than I can write. So sometimes I got to go back and say, well, let's add this. There's some new things that have happened from Google or from Apple. That's changing the scope of what I want to talk about, the direction of what I advise people to do. So I want to have this thing as up to date as possible, but also look at the evergreen big picture as much as possible. And that's changing things a little more than I would have expected. And this thing one of the test readers mentioned, it's sort of related to that. Because when I started this book, which is about 4 years ago at this point, the podcasting landscape, not what it is now. What she mentioned was that all my generic examples use masculine pronouns. So quick side note, I've got 5 people working on this other than me. 4 are women. My original editor, female. The 2 editors that I have now, female. I had an additional female test reader. This is the one who let me know that all my pronouns were masculine. And I had 1 male test reader. This one test reader, she was the only one to mention this. When I started this book, as I mentioned, the podcasting landscape, a lot different. And there were fewer women podcasters. Now, I wanted more females in podcasting. And in the beginning of this first draft, I actually issued a challenge to female podcasters. I said, podcasting is a place for everybody. You deserve a seat at the table as much as anybody. And I'm encouraging you to do a podcast. However, as you read this book, you will notice that I am using he instead of she. And the reason I'm using he instead of she is because in English, we do not have a singular pronoun that is gender neutral. We have he or we have she. And I'm not going to go through this book and make it even longer by saying he or she, his or hers. Not going to do that. I'm picking one and I'm sticking with it. And the reason I'm picking he over she is because the majority of podcasters are these middle-aged white guys, and I'm talking to them. I'm talking to my market. We have talked about this on Red Podcast before. It's important that you use the language and talk in a way that your audience connects with. If I'm talking to men, I'm going to say he. If I'm talking to women, I'm going to say she. If 80% of my people are men, I'm going to say he. But since I've started this book, a lot more females have gotten into podcasting. Basically, a lot more non-white males have gotten into podcasting. I've been very impressed with the events that I have done, the local podcaster meetup that I'm a part of, Nashville Podcasters. It's amazing. The podcasting events that we have done are more diverse than the cities that we are having them in. A quick side note, I think this is actually a huge opportunity for non-white male podcasters. More people are getting into podcasting. I think the reason that it was how it was, with the white males being such a significant portion of podcasters and people who listen to podcasts, if we're going to get into sociology, it simply has to do with the fact that white guys have more exposure to technology, especially when you get into economics of things that cost a lot of money. We got into it early. We had access to it early where other people wouldn't. That has changed. Technology costs have come down. It's easier than ever to make podcasts. It's easier than ever to listen to podcasts. The word is getting out about podcasts because of this. We're bringing other people into the fold. So I think that's one of the reasons that this has changed. The second thing that's happening right now, Me Too. Hashtag Me Too. That's a thing now. And because of this, I think a lot of guys, me included, we've become more aware of how our actions affect women. And I've been reading all these stories. 20-something years, I was focusing on the entertainment industry, notorious for these sorts of things. And I got to thinking, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I saw a video with Sarah Silverman that's related to this. And she was talking about changing comedy and changing with the times. And I think we can dig in to the way we grew up or the time that we grew up in. And she said, I was using words, maybe retarded. I don't remember what the word was. It's a word that a lot of people are offended by now. We used to not be offended by it. And she said, I didn't want to be that person that when I was growing up, I would hear them say, colored. I'm the same way. It used to be like, ugh. I grew up in the South. Colored was one of those words the old people used. And I would always hear that. I think, man, the world has moved on. Somebody let this lady know that there's a new term for this. When I was in college, I worked for a couple years taking care of a guy who was quadriplegic, lived with him, took care of him. He was also a fellow student. This was my roommate. And because he was quadriplegic, and by that I mean couldn't move his arms, could not move his legs, could move his head, maybe shrug his shoulders a little bit. I don't even think he could do that. And I was helping him a lot. That's why we lived together. Got him up in bed, put him in bed, did whatever I needed to. And my grandmother, I'd see her when I would come home for the holidays. She'd be like, you still working for that cripple boy? And she didn't mean anything by it. She didn't know the guy. That's just how people talked. And I'm not making an excuse for that. My point in bringing it up was I realized that I was doing that because there was a part of me, I was like, F this. I'm not changing a thing. This is correct grammar. It's like saying man or mankind. It's not necessarily gender specific, but it's correct grammar in that it's a singular pronoun. I am not changing it. And I thought about all those old people when I was growing up and they would use words that I didn't use. And I thought, I don't want to be that guy. So I went through and I changed it. I wanted podcasting to be for everybody. I wanted to be part of that change. And one of the things that I did, as I mentioned, 60 days ago, I finished out the initial draft. 30 days, didn't take me 30 days just to change he to she or rotate between he and then she and then he and then she. I went in and I found some different examples of different podcasters, not white men, but other types of podcasters, because I want to be an ambassador for podcasting. I believe it's extremely important now that we get out and we share our messages. We share good news. We share good stories. We share the good in the world and compete against other forms of media, whether it be sensational reality television, tabloids, news that tries to scare you, get you agitated just so they can sell more copies of their advertising, sell more copies of their publications. I wanted to be part of that change. So I added more to the book, more great examples, not just the old white men. Not that that's all I had, but I wanted to make sure that all of these new elements of podcasting have been covered in this book. Finished that draft up about 30 days ago, got it to my editing team, my two main editors that are working on the project now. Should have it back in a few days, and during that time, they have had the manuscript. I've been working on Forewords. Forward is more or less, here's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be somebody who is maybe established in the marketplace talking about how great you are. That's what it is traditionally. Like, I've known David Hooper, and he's a great broadcaster, and he's really somebody you should listen to. He's amazing, and he's brilliant, and you are going to love this book and get a lot out of it when you read it. That would be a forward done in a traditional way. What I want is something that's going to talk about what I'm talking about here, talking about how great podcasting is, somebody who can really sell podcasting and say, this is the future of media, connection, marketing, getting a message out. That's what I want. A lot of times people have forwards not only to hype themselves up, not only to hype something up like podcasting in general, like I would want, they want somebody who has that established name to add credibility to the book. Maybe somebody would promote it if they're involved with the project. Imagine if Oprah did my forward. Well, that's probably going to sell some books for me. Oprah's not doing it. I do have a short list, though, about 5 or 6 people, all of them well-known. All of them have podcasts. A couple of them in the entertainment profession. Some of them in the music industry. One of them is in prison. This is the first guy that I went to because I knew I was going to have issues getting to him. I don't know him. I don't know that he even got the messages that I sent to him. He doesn't have an agent. You got to write him and you've got to wait. And I've had friends in prison before. There's a process for getting mail to these guys. A lot of times they're going to open it. It's weird, man. They don't want you sending crazy stuff through the mail. So I don't know that this message ever got to this guy. I would love for him to do the forward, but there are also some other issues that maybe are going to affect this if this in fact happens. Can he actually publish something and do it in this way? Does it have to be some kind of underground thing? I don't know, but it's probably not going to happen in the timeline that I'm looking for, looking to get this book out in the next couple of months. Another guy that I reached out to, as I mentioned, a couple guys in the entertainment industries. This guy went through his producer, not even sure that he got it, contacted him directly, not even sure that he got it. I'm moving forward. Talked to a manager of one guy in person. He kind of blew me off. You know, I'm used to this, being in the music industry. It's like, well, we're not really ready for that project. We don't think it's going to be a good fit for him. He was kind of giving me hints to that. Truth be told, I had an opportunity to meet with this dude. You know, I mean, it was a big name, but it wasn't really a match for me. I don't agree with this guy's message. I think that he might help me sell books, and that's what I was thinking about when I initially talked to the manager, but not a match, so I'm moving forward. Another guy, kind of a similar situation, also in the entertainment industry. He'd help me sell more books, but I've had some contact with him before, not really super reliable, don't really like him all that much. But there's one guy, he is big in radio and also podcasting, and it just so happens that I grew up with him. Known him since I was 5 years old. That is my guy. So I am working on it. If this happens, I think it's going to really help the book to reach a lot of people. I think it's going to help bring podcasting to a lot of people. So I'm very excited about the potential for that. So I'm working on it. That's the status. As far as the general book status, team of editors. Got a text last night from one. She is done with it. It's going to the second part of the team. Should have it back by the end of the week. At this point, they've already gone through it a couple of times. I'll probably make the final fixes that they want, get it to a copy editor. He's going to go through it, make sure the grammar's good, make sure when I was changing the he's and she's, that if there was a his or hers, that everything matches. This is a guide just to make sure that I don't look like an idiot and there are not a lot of typos in there. Got a layout person, somebody that I've already worked with, already talked to her. She's ready to go as soon as I get her the final manuscript. I still need a title. I'm working with somebody that I've worked with before on this, so we are on it. Still need graphics. Got somebody on that too, somebody doing the cover for me. Should have more updates soon. I hope that you're finding this helpful. This is what it's like to do a book as I'm doing it. I'm trying to show you how it really works. By the way, it seems chaotic, I know, as I'm talking about it. This is not my first time doing a book. I've been involved in about 200 book projects. This is a big one for me, spending a little more time on this one than I would some other projects. I wanted to put this out there because I know there are a lot of book-in-a-box companies or business-in-a-box companies, 48-hour books. Like, yeah, we'll do a book for you. All you need to do is talk into a recorder, and we'll get a writer to transcribe it. You've got a best-selling book in 48 hours. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. I want to do something significant. I want to do something that matters. And I'm not saying that it has to take you 4 years. I'm not saying that it's hard. I don't think it's easy, but I do believe that there is ease to it. And I'm hoping that by hearing this series where I'm talking about this book, that I may be able to make this process easier on you. I could have gotten this book out about 3 years ago, and I had that opportunity. But here's what happens when you do a book that you're not really excited about. You're excited to be done with it. And I think if you get too caught up, it's easy to go ahead and press on, be done with it, get it out. Like, I just want to get this thing out. You get it back, and almost instantly, and I mean in the next 48 hours, you're like, I've made a horrible mistake. I should have waited, done this right. I see the same thing happen to guys who go for publishing deals. A lot of guys like, oh man, I got a publisher on. He's excited about releasing my book. Then the publisher doesn't do the cover right. The publisher doesn't do the edit right. The publisher doesn't market it, change the title, does any number of things. I know a lot of these guys will have these conversations after the fact, and they'll say, man, I wish I'd done like you, and I wish I'd done it on my own and had complete control. So I'm doing that. It takes a little more time. Thank you for sticking with me. If you are interested in this book, I'm more than happy to keep you updated on that. I'll be doing that, of course, through this podcast, but my podcast marketing website, bigpodcast.com, there's a mailing list, and I will keep you updated on the highs, the lows, the middles, what I'm trying to do here, but in a different way with quick email updates, let you know when this thing is out. You're an expert. That's why you're listening to this. You've got a message to spread. That's why you're listening to this. Podcasting is a big opportunity for you right now, and I want to help you do that. If this is something that connects with you, let's talk. Go to bigpodcast.com, sign up for the list, reach out to me, let me know how I can help you. Thank you for listening to Red Podcast. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to be releasing this project soon. I'm going to have more updates for you shortly. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you soon on the next episode of Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe now with your iPhone, Android, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.